This week, I went and I got blood test done. Like a whole. Have you heard of Function Health?
I have not, but I can guess what maybe it does.
They have you go take blood tests and they give you your numbers on like everything. Yeah. Okay, so I read your book all about AI and medicine, and the whole time I'm like, yeah, AI, we need real doctors. And then what did I do this week? I went and got a blood test. What's the first thing I did once I got all my results? Threw it all in ChatGPT and was like, Dr. GPT, tell me what any of this means. We're in a weird time with medicine and AI, and every day I'm telling my wife, like, hey, let's not trust ChatGPT too much. Remember, it's kind of a bullshit artist.
Yeah.
And then also we're like, what does my protein mean? What is this? And talking to it all the time. I don't know. What got you into writing this book and going like into the near future and imagining AI sort of taking everything over?
I forget what the name was, but recently I saw this guy on TikTok who has been talking to the voice part of ChatGPT and just exposing like some of the ridiculous things that is wrong about it. It'll say, for example, hey, time me while I run this mile. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna time you, get started. He's like, all right, start now. Literally 5 seconds later, he's like, I'm done. How long did that take? And then ChatGPT is like, it took you about 10 minutes and 37 seconds. He was like, I think it was a lot quicker than that. He was like, no, sometimes it can feel quicker, but it's not. And then it went so viral, Sam Altman responded to it and was saying that, it doesn't have access to a timer yet. In about a year, it should. And then this TikToker went back and had ChatGPT listen to Sam Altman say that. And then ChatGPT was like, that's right. Some versions don't have a timer, but I totally do. So it's an interesting thing because talking to it about things that maybe are nuanced, or like, for example, if I ask it like, what's the best restaurants to go in the city or what have you, how it responds, it sounds like it knows what it's talking about. But it's interesting, I think, listening to these examples where it's like obviously wrong, and then you wonder, okay, what else is it? Kind of filling in the gaps about it, making up things about. But when it comes to writing about AI, interesting enough, I started the story, the idea for this story, back in 2013. When I was a first year medical student, and that was before AI had, had started to take off like how it is now. So back then, and I think that the book benefits from it because back then it was still very speculative. I could still think about like, okay, what are the things I think it could do well? What are like some of the fears? Whereas if I was starting to sit down to write it now, then I would very much have in my head, okay, large language models are doing this, and what does it look like for image generation, and who's controlling it or what have you. I think then it would very much force the direction to go in a different way. Whereas when I started it, I was entering the medical field and learning like the new technology that existed then, and I could think about, okay, what if there is super intelligence in the future? What are some of the hopes? What are some of the pitfalls? That's why that's where I started the idea, and it's evolved over time as I've gone through medical school and become a psychiatrist. And then these last 3 or few years of editing the book and getting it to the final product, as AI is kind of taken off, I haven't changed too much, but it's also just making sure that, okay, am I still in conversation with what's going on now? Does the stuff in the book seem obsolete or what have you? And I think that a lot of the warnings and the commentary still hold true with how things are manifesting today. Just in interesting ways. I mean, when I'm starting off in medicine, I think that my hope for AI is to be a tool, right? Like, this, like, for example, you went to get your blood draw and, like being able to have that and having AI tell you like, hey, these are the questions you should have for your doctor at your next appointment. I think that could be very valuable, or even something that, the doctor can use as a tool. And it's like, hey, all of these metrics are in the green. But if you actually look at how they combine, and that, the combination of this one being in the low normal and this one being in the high normal, this demographic and all these other studies, this actually might be a prediction for this issue well down the line, right?
Yeah.
I think that could be very powerful versus, you know, just putting into ChatGPT and then at home, and then that kind of being the end of it, right? Like, or that being something that either reassures you too much or sends you into a tailspin too much. So it's interesting how it plays out now, or is playing out.
I think in general, when I've gone to ChatGPT and put in things that are like, oh, this concern or that, some with medical, but also some just like even the stock market. I've gone in before, back, the stock market has taken a big dive since like October. But like at October, it was like peak. So back then, I was like, man, I've got like 20% return in the last like 5 months. I know that's not supposed to be how it goes. So maybe I should like cash out, because it's not going to be like this forever. Maybe I should just kind of cash out for a minute and then come back into the next crash. And I went to ChatGPT and it was like, no, it's fine. Just, you can go down a little bit, blah, blah, blah. No one knows the future. No one knows what's going to happen with stocks. But like, I think more often than not, if we go to it with a bigger problem, it's like, don't freak out about this.
Yeah.
It's almost like not raising alarm signals when it should.
It could be an issue in itself. It's interesting. I think one of the things, as being a doctor and knowing like the potentials of missing something, sometimes we could have the intuition like, oh, this is likely nothing, but what if it is something, right? And we might say, okay, we should just check this out, so that we're not missing something, so that this isn't that zebra that could be life threatening. So it's interesting, I think, with like the ChatGPT, it's making people feel like, oh, everything's going to be all right. And then how does that manifest in different things? Like, I don't know too much of the details of it, but I hear the stories of the large language model, leading someone towards suicide. Or there's some stories about like induced psychosis, like people who haven't been psychotic before, like becoming psychotic off of like talking with the large language models. And I imagine probably in neither of those situations was the chat like saying something in kind of a high anxiety manner. It was almost probably just reinforcing like lightly these ideas that like the person already had. So it's an interesting it's interesting thing to see. As a psychiatrist, like I definitely have to align with patients, but I might have in my mind, okay, like I'm worried about this, and I know if I get too high strung about this, I may lose them and they're not going to come see me again. So how do I align with them while also keeping in my mind that like this is something I'm worried about, and my goal is to try to align enough so that me and the patient can now walk together so that we can take care of this thing that I'm worried about. So it's an interesting thing, the differences with something like a large language model.
In your book, the only people who are resisting AI all live down in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So I guess like first question, why New Orleans?
I'm not from New Orleans. I've never lived in New Orleans. I'm from DC. I've lived in New York and Los Angeles and the Bay Area. So there's a couple things I think with New Orleans. There's one of my best friends is from New Orleans. So I visited there a few times, and really liked it as a place to visit and culturally. And I had read Fever Dream by George R. R. Martin maybe like 15 years ago. It's basically a vampire story set in New Orleans about like in the middle 1800s. So from a literary standpoint, I really enjoyed that book, and I really enjoyed the setting. So that was kind of ripe in my mind to try to make something based there. When I started the story back in 2013, it was a short story, and it was actually set like hundreds of years in the future, and a lot of things were unrecognizable, and the future city was loosely based on New Orleans. So then I had just a lot of free reign to like, okay, it's almost like a fantasy where I'm creating some new environment, but if somebody is looking into it, they might be like, oh, I wonder if this is like, 200 years in the future of New Orleans. But then when I brought it to the present, like a step into the future, I was thinking about, okay, where do I want to place this? And I actually went a few different places in the United States. And I thought, okay, I started this story thinking about New Orleans. I think that in terms of how they're going to be affected by climate change going forward, I could really see it being ripe for them going in a different direction than the rest of the country. Like
Mm,
recognizing that, like, okay, this direction that the country is going, it might be great for y'all, but we're feeling like we're left behind, and we need to just take things in our own hands, like do what's the best for us. And they also have medical institutions there. They have a few med schools, hospitals, a rich culture. So it felt like it had everything that I needed to
yeah.
make the juxtaposition to, for example, where the main character grew up, New York. And that's where I did my training for medical school. So then I was able to kind of really ground in the beginning in a reality that I knew, and then, okay, go to this like imagined different place that has really made its own future, if that makes any sense.
One thing I thought about as you read about the medical school, what's the school called again?
Oh, Hippocrates.
Hippocrates. So some of it just sounds like obviously medicine that didn't take this whole AI futuristic route. But also there's like a more, I don't, how would you describe it? There's more like spiritual backdrop that's like a type of medicine that we don't really do that almost is maybe more like Eastern medicine. Or I'm curious like your inspiration for that, because there's pieces of it where it doesn't sound like Western modern medicine either. It sounds more like intuitive and, I forget the word, what his dad studies.
Oh, the essence.
The essence, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's like not really a part of Western medicine as far as I know. I didn't go to medical school, but it
Yeah.
felt like you added other cultures or influence there.
Yeah. One thing I've been very mindful of in different aspects of kind of growing up and living is, okay, what about the experience is different from what I'm having? What about the teachings different from what I'm having? Even, for example, like with religion, growing up in Christian household, my mind would think like, but what about the people who grew up, with a completely different religion, like, and they're told from day one, like, this is how things are. This is how things are. So I think going into
Mm,
medical school, I recognize, okay, I'm learning like Western medicine, and this is to even just conquer this, if you ever can conquer it. Like, I have to study a lot. I have to, go through years and years of training or what have you. I can't really do more than, it would be, I don't think it would be good for me or for my patients if I tried to become like a hat of all trades. But I had that intellectual interest in terms of like, what are the gaps in what I'm learning, right? Like, what things about humanity and disease and healing might we be missing just from
mm.
our, for lack of a better term, like relatively like narrow view of, for quote unquote, evidence-based medicine. So, and writing has always been my way of being able to explore like the questions that I have. So when I sat down to think about, a medical institution, and particularly a medical institution that is trying to have an alternative to relying on the technology. It's like, okay, let me look into like how the history of medicine. Let's see how like medicine had been practiced over, the various centuries, like how medicine is practiced in other parts of the world. Looked into Chinese medicine and acupuncture or what have you, and this idea of, I forget exactly what, but I think in Chinese medicine it's the idea of these different flow states throughout the body. There's a specific word that I'm not
Mm.
remembering now. And I think then having that knowledge and then being able to come back to on the page, okay, what do I know about being a doctor or what have you? And how can I apply some of these principles to what I've learned about being a physician and being with the patient, and, being able to tell like what is wrong with somebody's like heartbeat or their blood pressure by being able to touch them, versus just relying on what the monitors say. And then with
Mm.
the essence, that specifically, intellectually, I've been interested or fascinated with, you know, physics and reality, and the farther you get down in like quantum physics or quantum mechanics or what have you, it starts feeling like magic, right? And then you
Uh-huh.
have this idea of like dark matter, where from my understanding, it's something that like I can't show it to you. I can't like, quantify it, but because of the math or what have you, I know that it's there. So I thought with that basis, that gave me a door to think about something like the essence, and say like it actually could be some what's it called? Some detail or a characteristic of the universe that we are not able to quite quantify yet, but we can look and do studies and show like, oh, like you can have two molecules that are the exact same structure, but they do things differently based on if one is synthetic and one comes from nature, right? And it might be like
Yeah.
some force there that we actually aren't able to see scientifically, or we're not able to measure or what have you, but these studies show that it's there. So it was a kind of way of me to root the essence in science, so that then in Western medicine, knowing that we're very much focused on evidence-based medicine, I could kind of take a little bit of what that woo-woo-ness away.
Mm-hmm.
But also, we don't know exactly how consciousness works. We don't know how our own brains work. Like, is consciousness, is that an innate characteristic of the universe, and our brains are allowing us to tap into that? We don't know. So I think that
Yeah.
I was able to kind of explore with the book. Okay, it may be like 20 years in the future, maybe we do find something new like dark matter, which seems like magic to us now, but is actually rooted in science.
Yeah. My wife's super into all the woo woo. And so she's slowly like breaking me down over time. I think the way I've come to accept it is like, or in my current process of the journey is like, I'm like, yeah, maybe there's something to that. But I'm like, I don't really believe in it, but I'm also a little bit open-minded. So anyway, my newest one is plastic. So
Hmm.
I've joined the fuck plastic
Oh
train.
yeah, yeah.
I'm having fun with it. So I went from, my progression was beer to like, I was drinking beer like every night, and then I moved to like hard seltzers, and that's like less calories, so it's better for you, right?
Yeah.
Then I moved to just like LaCroix. Then we moved to Spindrift because it's like natural ingredients.
Mm.
And now my new layer of extremism is make my own sparkling water at home with an all stainless steel device, no plastic touching anything, making it fresh. And now I'm like squeezing grapefruits.
Wow. Well,
So she's breaking me down. I'm getting more woo woo.
I've jumped around from all of those. I really like
Yeah.
seltzer, and my wife had gotten me one of those things, and I know where it is. I can think where you can make your own carbonated water, like
Yeah.
maybe like 4 years ago, and now I feel like I bring it out. I remember that it exists like every like 8 months, and
Uh
now
huh.
But right now, I think that my main thing is the Lacroix, and I hadn't even thought about what'd you say, Spindrift. So I'm gonna have to look into that.
Spindrift.
You know,
Yeah. They sell it at Costco and most grocery stores, but it's just like natural. It's like supposedly actual fruit put in there instead of
mm,
like whatever essence LaCroix is.
yeah.
I love all of the LaCroix jokes, like somebody just whispered a fruit name near it. You know?
That's that's funny. With the plastics, I feel like I've almost like mentally blocked it out because it's like it's so much around us. I'm like, man, if this is
Yeah.
killing us, we're just screwed. Like, cause
Yeah.
it's thinking of the microplastics, I was like, it's everywhere.
100%.
Not to say
It's a
that it's
hard one to want to believe because, yeah, you're right. You're just
yeah.
like, well, do I have to change everything about my life?
It's almost like cars and highways. Like when you look at, go back 200 years or what have you, it's those didn't exist, but now it's transformed the way we live. Like plastics are everywhere and so ubiquitous. That when I saw that, I was like, oh no, well, there goes all my healthy eating over the years.
Right. And then you even go to the health food store and everything's like wrapped in
Hmm.
plastic. I don't think I have it in me to become such an extremist that I like truly boycott plastic from my life. I don't think I have that.
Yeah.
But what I do think I can do is like, I'm like, okay, if I'm drinking 2 Spindrifts every night for the rest of my life, what I found out is inside of the aluminum bottles, they have a plastic lining. So I thought you were just drinking out of an aluminum can. No, they
I didn't know
put
that.
they put plastic inside of it.
Oh, see, now you done ruined. No,
Right?
because I was thinking, okay, I got the aluminum cans, I'm fine.
So yeah, you kind of have to go way out of your way to be woo woo, but I feel like I can do it in selective doses here and there. But the essence. So I thought that was a cool element to it. That there was a little bit of a like unexplainedness. Like they didn't just stick to Western medicine at Hippocrates.
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 Yes.
I also didn't know the whole time I was reading the book. I'm like, poke. I went back in my head the whole time.
Pock. Yeah, it was originally original time it was POC because it was supposed to be short for Hippocrates. Like as his father's ode to it. But then somebody a while ago was like, "Oh, POC, are you trying to say that his name is people of color?" I was like, "No, that's not what I'm saying." So let me just put a K on it. Pac. And then somebody recently was like, "Is it like Tupac?" I was like, "No," but that's how it's pronounced, Pac.
I thought that one too.
Yeah.
I am curious about your like psychiatry. I go to a therapist. I know that's a completely different thing. But in my mind, they're almost like similar.
Yeah.
To be a psychiatrist, you actually go to medical school. And is it like general purpose medical school?
Yeah.
You can tell I'm speaking from a lot of ignorance right now. But tell me about what you do.
Yeah, and actually going into medical school, I would say in the beginning, I didn't know. I don't think I knew that psychiatrists were like a thing or psychiatry was a thing. Really hadn't, I went in pretty ignorant too. But so any medical doctor, anybody with an MD goes to the same first 4 years, more or less, of medical school. Especially the first 3 years are the same. So the first two, it's 4 years of medical school. First 2 years, it's mainly lectures. Like you go, it's roughly the first year you learn about how the body works. The second year, like with anatomy and like physiology, etc. And then the second year you learn about all the things that can go wrong. The third year you go, it's like an apprenticeship. You go into the hospital and you have these rotations, and everybody, whether you're going to be a surgeon or you're whether going to be a pediatrician, they do OBGYN, they do neurology, they do psychiatry, internal medicine, pediatrics, surgery, and I'm probably emergency medicine, right? And then the fourth year is when you like start specializing. There's still like some things that everybody does, like I did in my emergency medicine rotation fourth year. But then knowing by then that I was going to psychiatry, I would do like specialized rotations in psychiatry. Like, and then, so that's the 4 years of medical school. And then people apply to residency. So residency is like you have your MD, you're a doctor, but you still have to go through training before you can practice independently. So like a surgeon would go and have 5 years of residency, like Grey's Anatomy, for example. Like they go in, they're interns and, they're, like baby surgeons or what have you. And then over time they become, adult surgeons, right? So psychiatry is in the same way. It's 4 years. I did my residency at UCLA. It's almost kind of breaking up like med school. The first 2 years is mainly in the hospital. So inpatient, like locked units, the emergency room, overnights or what have you. And then the second 2 years is outpatient. So seeing people who come to your office, who don't need the level of care that a locked unit is, and usually locked unit for psychiatry is people who are a danger to themselves or others or can't take care of themselves. So everybody goes through that in terms of what psychiatry gets those, and then they decide what it is they want to do. Like, do they want to be an inpatient psychiatrist? Do they want to work in an emergency department? Do they want to work at like a state hospital? I am an outpatient psychiatrist now. So I see people in my office or virtually. Like today I'm working from home and seeing people virtually. Like I just saw somebody before this, I'll see somebody after this. And it can be a range of things that I'm comfortable working with people who, like, from depression to anxiety, bipolar, OCD to schizophrenia, ADHD, PTSD, a real range, And then some psychiatrists do therapy, and I'm one of those. I actually, I have a lot of patients who call me therapists. Some of them are on medication, some of them are not. And that was one of the things that drew me to psychiatry, was like seeing therapy and the love for that, and being able to really, I think, sit with people and kind of help, I think, discover their story. At a time, it was about half of what I would do, like half of my hours in a week were therapy patients. Whereas right now, I'd say like maybe like 10 hours out of a given week are therapy patients. So there could be a mix, but it's definitely, most psychiatrists may only do medication management, which means that, they mainly make sure that the medications are appropriate, that they're safe, manage the side effects, the symptoms, or what have you. Um, but some definitely still also do therapy on top of that.
So I could open a huge rabbit hole. So I did an interview with Paul Tremblay,
Mm.
who I think
Yeah.
wrote did a what do you call it? Not a forward on your book,
blurb.
but like a blurb.
Yeah.
So Head Full of Ghosts, are they possessed or are they schizophrenic? Is kind of one of the big questions. So I have a brother who's schizophrenic, and I opened up by telling him like the wildest story I have about my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun because he's kind of laughing in the beginning because he didn't know it was real. He thought I was just playing on his book.
Yeah.
And then he figured out it was real. And then he's like, oh my God, I'm sorry. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But when I read the book, when I read Head Full of Ghosts, I'm like, yeah, I see it. But anyway, so like I said, my brother's schizophrenic and he's currently not on his medicine. And so I got him to go, and he was taking, it's probably, you're not allowed to say stuff like this, I'm sure, but I don't have a HIPAA oath. So he was taking I think Invega.
Yeah. So like the injection?
Yes, the injection. And I got him to do it for like 3 months, maybe 4 months. And then he's like, I'm done. It's interesting because he would, I don't know if you see this at your patients, but he would talk to me. He's like, can I please not, like, please, Ryan, I don't want to take my medicine.
Yeah.
And I was like, you have to. I was like, if you go, I'm going to give you $50. Like, I just bribed him with like money because I'm not there. So I'll give you $50 to go do your medicine. Say, all right. And he finally says, can I please not? Can I please not? The weird thing to me is he's 29. So it's interesting that from 2,000 miles away, like I can't control him, but he kind of would talk to me like he could just not do it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do. But it was kind of interesting how he sort of had this almost like a child needing to get permission kind of a thing. Anyway, he stopped taking his medicine. It's now been another like 4 or 5 months. He no longer wanted the $50. He's done. And I'm just kind of waiting for the next, for something to happen. On this end of things, as like family member of somebody who's schizophrenic, it's tough because I have like, first of all, you're out of control in general. But second of all, I'm not even 100% convinced he's schizophrenic. I have a lot of evidence that he might be schizophrenic, and I know that he has been diagnosed schizophrenic in the past. So that's kind of what I'm latching onto. But also, I think he's had like multiple diagnoses over the years, and sometimes they say other things, and I've never been there because of HIPAA laws and everything else. Like, it's not like him and I went into the doctor and they figured it out together. And so it's an interesting situation where I've been trying to help somebody manage their medicine, kind of going on faith that the diagnosis they got in the past was correct for them and that they need this medicine. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that other than you're a psychiatrist, but I have tried to help him in the past by talking to a psychiatrist, and obviously because of HIPAA laws, I'm like not allowed to.
If he agrees that you can talk to a psychiatrist, so for example, if I have a patient, yes, I can't. I can only talk to somebody else, like let's say a family member in an emergency, right? But I can get permission from them, like a release of information to say, like, and I'll have that where it's like, oh, can I talk to your family member? So that is something that can happen with proper documentation, and it's interesting, from my perspective or my experience with schizophrenia, or just a variety of different mental health elements, particularly schizophrenia and bipolar, is that there's a range of insight. Like some people will know, like the things that they're experiencing, they will know that they're hallucinations, and they'll know that it causes them distress, and they'll also know that the medications help. So they might be able to say like, I'm having these symptoms, the medications help. So then they'll more be aligned and kind of like working with me in terms of like finding the right medication for that. And sometimes people have very what we call like low insight, where it's adamant that there's nothing wrong. These thoughts that I'm having from outside looking in, very very clear that they might be delusional or hallucinations, but they're convinced that that is their reality, right? And that the
That's like
medications are hindering them.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, and that can be very hard, I think, to treat because you want to align with the patient, but they're coming at it from like, I don't want I don't want medications, what sometimes they have patients like what can I do for you to take off this diagnosis of schizophrenia, or when's it going to go away, or what I have to do to convince you that I don't have this. So that could be very hard. Um,
Mm.
and then the various side effects that people may experience. Sometimes people don't have much side effects at all. Sometimes people are very aware of how it makes them feel different and they're uncomfortable with that. So it can be very tough. But I would say if your brother has like a psychiatrist that they're seeing regularly, you can ask your brother to ask to tell the psychiatrist that, you know, um,
Yeah.
if he's open. So it's tough if he's not. I've dealt with that too before where like, I might have patients who are like paranoid of the people around them and don't want me to talk to anybody, so,
Right.
and I have to respect that as long as it's not an emergency or what have you. I have to respect that, they might be like, I really don't want to, and they might also be paranoid of what their family member is going to say. So as much as I can, I just have to kind of rely on what's in front of me. But from a provider's perspective, it is also it's very helpful to get family members' perspective. I definitely can think of a few times where I've had a patient where then I'll talk to the family member for whatever reason. And I'm like, I totally missed this whole aspect, or, oh, I didn't realize that this was going on, and having like that outside perspective can be helpful, but it can be really tough.
Yeah. This is an interesting thing. The big case this last summer, or not summer, winter, with Rob Reiner's son.
Yes.
Which I don't know if it's ever been confirmed that he was diagnosed schizophrenic or not. I know that was talked about in the news at the time, and I haven't checked back in. But in either case, my brother was supposed to go see his dad for Christmas, and they haven't been in touch for probably 7 years. He was supposed to go see him for Christmas. The night of the Rob Reiner murders, he texted me like, "Hey, I don't think it's going to be good for Sean to come this year. It's just with everything going on in the world right now." And I was like, "Okay, you just canceled on your son because he's afraid he's going to come murder you and your wife."
Yeah.
Without saying those words out loud, but that's what happened. There's so much stigma around schizophrenia.
Yeah.
You probably are encountering that a lot, like the different just people's stigma or non-understanding of the disease. I wonder if there was an uptick, and especially with you being in LA, if there's an uptick of people being like, wait, schizophrenics, are they going to kill us? What's going on? Is there anything you can kind of demystify for people about schizophrenia, what it actually is, and whether people need to be in fear of these people or?
Yes. So people with mental health issues are much more likely to be victims of violent crimes than to be perpetrators of them.
Really?
Yeah. So it's something that we learn, and there's been research on it. So we learned that very early on. So it's it can be our media, movies, or what have you. I think reinforce like that for quote unquote like that are crazy people or dangerous, right? So, but with schizophrenia, for example, as a whole, there's a lot of different ways that it can manifest schizophrenia. Sometimes people can have disorganized thought process, right? So they might not necessarily hear voices or have delusions, right? But they have really pervasive issues with getting their thoughts in order, and these might be the people that, who do odd things, who, may, just think of they may see what's it called? they make connections through different things, like we call it ideas of reference, where they might, see the number 7 and think that it's connected to like some past life or something like that, or maybe some
Mm.
omen. Then there are some people who might just have auditory hallucinations, and those, the classic, what you may see in movies or what have you, is like, oh, these are voices that are telling them to do something, and usually if it's in a movie, they're telling them to do something dangerous. But a lot of times
Yeah.
the hallucinations don't tell them to do anything. They're mainly just whispers that are distressing. Sometimes it could be calling their name, or sometimes it can be, dictating or commenting on their, on their life. A lot of times it can be just a negative self-talk, just removed, like almost like a half second from our own internal voice, and then it seems like it's an outside voice, right? Like, so for example, if I might have that talking to you right now, I might have like a voice that it feels like I can hear that saying like, hey, you're you're bumbling this response, you're
Yeah.
talking too long, like, his viewers are going to hate this. So for example, I might actually hear that, or feel like it's an outside voice, when it's really, just a manifestation of my own like insecurities or what have you. Um, and even when people, I think, get really distressed with their, like, oh, then there could be like delusions, right? So those are like fixed false beliefs. So a delusion may be that, what can I say, like our family members are imposters, like somebody's
Uh,
like kidnapped the family members and they're imposters, or it's tough now, but the government is like after me, and every turn that I see is like that car is, them stalking me or what have you. Whereas like the evidence outside shows that that's actually not the case, but no evidence really can touch their thoughts or their beliefs. So really across the board, like me seeing this in an outpatient setting, I can't even think of anybody that I see that I'm worried about it becoming like violent.
hmm.
And usually, if it is something that that goes towards violence, it will be part of their history. It will be part of their, the type of delusions they might have, especially if they have delusions that people are like, after them, and that they're feeling like they need to protect themselves or what have you, which I don't see too often. That's going to be something that's kind of there all along. It isn't something where it's like, oh, just because somebody has like the diagnosis of schizophrenia, all of a sudden one day they're going to be capable of violence. I think in the same way, like me or you, like we're not going to just all of a sudden be capable of violence tomorrow if we don't have that in our past or our history. And even if like we're violent for the first time tomorrow, unless something happened in our brain, like a stroke or something like that, there was probably some signs that led up to it, like maybe anger issues here, or like having like a short temper or what have you. So the diagnosis itself doesn't mean that like, oh, they have the capacity to just snap any more than the rest of us.
Good clarification. Well, I know you just got another 5-10 minutes before you've got to get back to the grind.
Yeah, yeah,
But to bring it back to AI and medicine,
yeah.
where do you hope it goes? What are you seeing it doing? Is AI impacting psychiatry right now and like your job, or are you hearing about others? Anyway, what are you seeing? Where do you hope this is going? Do you think there's hope for us to not become like what's the name of the organization in your
Oh,
book?
the Shepherd organization.
The Shepherds.
Yeah, 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 yeah. On the doctor side with psychiatry, I mean, there's kind of whispers here and there. Like the main thing that I've seen, and I haven't used it myself. The main thing I've seen is like, software that'll write the notes for you, or will,
Mm,
record the session and then show notes or what have you, which are things that I just haven't adopted. And I don't know if any psychiatrists in my practice have adopted that or used that. I think that one of the important things about seeing patients is actually being able to sit down and think about like what was going on, and kind of the sitting and the writing and writing a formulation, and this is what I think, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, this is why I prescribe what I prescribe. I think that's an important mental exercise that I wouldn't want to do a shortcut with. Um I think I've heard there are some. I think one of my colleagues was using something like maybe an AI like research database that was supposed that I think summarized some papers for them. So that's an aspect as well that I think in terms of fetching information where it's being used. Um, and then on the therapy side of things, definitely have had a lot of patients who come, not a lot, but a good amount that have come and said like, oh, I've been dabbling with ChatGPT as a therapist, so that's a very interesting thing. I think that unfortunately, our medical system leaves a lot of gaps for AI to come in and like fill in the gaps for better or for worse, right? Like it's hard to chastise somebody for using like a chat GPT therapist when they're like, well, I tried to find a therapist, but my insurance isn't covering it, or I can't get an appointment for like another 6 months, or I tried these different ones and I didn't have like a good experience or what have you. Then it's like, okay, you have something that's cheap and easy, et cetera. And I think on a surface level can seem like it's giving like really great insight. But I think over time, I do think that there's an important inherent thing about being seen by another human. In terms of like my hopes, what would I want AI to do? As a psychiatrist, I would want it to really not the generative AI, like the large language model. Like I really have no real interest in that. What I would want and what I was thinking about back when I started writing this book is like those systems that can take a large amount of data and analyze it. So if I'm sitting with a patient, um, and being if there's a computer system that's able to look at their whole history, look at like
Mm.
maybe let's say if there's even tracking devices or what have you, and sees like all these physiological patterns, and then is also able to tap into all of these other patient data and interactions and outcomes, and then is also able to look at all the studies that have ever been done, what have you, and then being able to bring out important insights that I could then use to help decide on the best treatment with the patient. I do think that there's potentially a lot of power with like preventative medicine, and being able to predict things that we can't even really imagine now. One example that I use is like, let's say if you had a tracking device that is able to say that, oh, the rate at which you're blinking has changed in a way that is predictive that maybe 10 years from now you're going to be at risk for pancreatic cancer or something, right? Some two
Yeah.
things that seem like they're not even going to be related. I do think that like big data sets and analyzing could be very powerful at extrapolating kind of like those correlations, and then it being something that I think in a doctor's hand it could be like, okay, is this worth looking to or is this not? And I think probably even more so something like rate of eye blinking could be, who knows, it might even be more informative of like, oh, is this person like starting that prodrome phase of schizophrenia? And prodrome basically means that like there are some personality changes that usually happen like a few years before that first psychotic break. Not across the board,
Mm.
but that could be looking back, it's like, oh, this was predictive of what we see now. And I think that that something that's collecting all this data and then able to compare it to this big data set, I think could be very powerful in being able to prevent or, give interventions very early on for whether it's mental health issues or whether it's like cancer or whether it's heart disease. So that's where I hope AI may go in the direction is. But instead, I feel like it's doing things that we didn't really ask for it to do, like creating music and images and weird videos. So it'd be interesting to see like what direction it continues to take.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah,
The
thanks for
book
having me.
is The Hospital at the End of the World by Justin C. Key. And we just talked about serious stuff, but it's a fun book. And in a lot of ways, I don't know if you would think this or not, but some ways it reminded me of Harry Potter.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like, kid goes to school and discovers this whole other world. And, you know, it very much is relevant to all of today's issues with health and AI. And so I enjoyed it a lot. So y'all check it out.
yeah. And I'll say one of my loves for like school stories, I think, comes from that. One of my origin stories, for lack of a better term, is that I had read the seventh book, the last book of Harry Potter. It came out in 2007. Me and my best friend, we were in college, and he was on the top bunk, I was on the bottom, and we just read that book in like a day and a half. And I think the
Wow.
next day I sat down and started writing a novel. It's a trunk novel that never see the light of day, but I remember just being like inspired by that, and I'd already wanted to write, but that summer was when I really started like getting serious about writing. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I found out that this was going to be a school story is, okay, how can I recreate that kind of magic, for lack of a better term, of being in school? And I also think it's a ripe area to teach while having like entertainment, right? Like in those school stories, by definition, they're learning things. So it's a good place to like I said, to teach. And that's what I loved about Michael Crichton growing up, is that, I'd be entertained while learning so much about science. So,
well, I definitely, I got a third of the way in and I'm like, this guy must have gone to medical school. Like, there's too much knowledge.
Yeah.
This would have been so much research.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, thank you so much, Justin.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for having this. Is great.